If you want the best note-taking methods to cover any subject, then you've come to the right place. Because I've done an undergrad and postgraduate degree, and now I'm a final year med student. So I've spent more years studying and experimenting with a bunch of different methods than most people would do in their entire life. So I'll go through 3 methods that I found to complement each other that made learning any subject as efficient as possible, so that I didn't have to study all day and could have a personal life. And it's going to help you do the same. So the first method is the easiest or fastest to do, and it deals with a problem a lot of us have that I'm sure you'll relate to. So think back to when you were sitting in your class or lecture and you were trying to take notes on everything your professor was saying. You made sure to write or type as fast as possible, and because you were so focused on getting everything noted down, you went into an autopilot mode. So you'd hear what was being said but not listen, or you'd write what you saw but not understand. And you know what this meant. It meant that when class was over, you'd barely remember what you were actually taking notes on, so you'd have to go through all of it again. This is how most people take notes, even though it's a very passive method. So in your classes, an easier but still very effective note-taking method is the flow method. This was mentioned by Scott Young, and it's where you actively engage with what you're learning instead of just copying things down without thinking, so that you learn during your classes instead of having to go through everything again after. And so how do you apply this method? So as an example, if I'm going through a lecture on strokes, I'll have the slides up for that lecture. With this method, I'll aim to only listen to the professor whilst following the slides. But whenever they say anything that seems important for a deeper understanding of the slide, I'll rephrase what they say into my own words and add it to the slides or to my notes. The name flow method is how it should be used, because instead of forcing yourself to write down every single detail, this method helps you go with the flow of your lecture by actively listening to your teacher for the most important points, and only expanding on them if necessary so that your focus is on the right place. This listening and rephrasing is what helps you remember, because it requires an active effort from you to think about what you're going through. And as you keep using this method, you'll only get better at summarizing key points and retaining them after the lecture's over, which would never happen from just copying everything down. And now for the next method. It's what I would say is the most useful method for note-taking in med school, and also useful for subjects where you really need to understand what you're learning, because this method combines some of the things I've mentioned in my past videos, such as using active recall and making sure to summarize or condense content into a sentence or two. And this is the Cornell Notes method. But there's a few changes to make it better for long-term memory retention, which I'll get to. But first, the Cornell Notes method is made up of 3 parts. Your notes section, which you fill in as you do your lecture or read through your textbooks. The cues section, which is where you have questions or keywords that you make after taking notes. And then a summary section, where you summarize that page of notes into a sentence or two, or even write down extra information to help you understand your notes. This method is good because it incorporates active recall with the cues section, where you'd have your questions based on your notes. I've also seen it used by students doing more technical degrees like maths or engineering, because it's useful for having your working out in a note format, where the summary section goes into the topics you get wrong, so that you can refer back to it and look out for patterns in your mistakes. And this is what helps you to work on them to get better. But our problem is that it's a very manual method, since you'd have to remember to go through your Cornell notes regularly so that you have spaced repetition. And remember, spaced repetition is there to help you retain what you learn over a longer period of time, so that you counteract the forgetting curve. So to change it from a manual method to one that's more automated, apply this method directly into flashcard software such as Anki. This is to stop you from wasting time on thinking about what topics you need to revisit and when you need to go through them again, because it will automatically take care of the whole planning process for you, so that all you have to do is get on with doing. So how would this look using Anki? This would be making your study notes directly into the flashcard rather than making handwritten or typed notes elsewhere. And once you've made your notes, make the question for the flashcard as your cue. If there's any extra information, this can be added as a separate paragraph beneath your notes. You can see that this is effectively digitalizing the Cornell Notes method to make it more efficient. I won't go through all the details of Anki because I've already got an overview linked in the description, so check that out to see how I use it to make use of the Cornell method as effectively as possible. And now the third method is slightly different from the last 2, because this method is less about diving deep into one topic and more about seeing how different topics or subtopics connect, making it ideal for building a strong foundation in any subject. And this is known as the mind map method, but there's a few changes I'd suggest to make it more helpful for memory retention. So first, as an example, if I'm studying a broad subject like neurology, a mind map would help me go through the key bits of information without being distracted by too much detail. So this would be starting with neurology in the center and branching out into the main sections like disorders, signs and symptoms, and treatments. And what helps to maximize how much you remember is making sure to incorporate multiple modalities into your mind maps. And what this means is that instead of just sticking to writing or typing things down, use images to help you visualize what you're learning, or color coordinate each of the different sections to make the information more memorable. This method helps you see everything in one organized layout and forces you to actively actively think about the key details of the topics. But now a problem a lot of students face is that when it gets to exam season, there might still be a lot of content to learn and go through. And if you don't have too much time before your exams, you know how difficult and stressful it is to go through all of the content and retain all of that information. But over my years at university, I figured out the best way to learn new content as fast as possible without having to cram. And in this video here, I talk about how you can do this too so that you do well in your exams. So click the video to learn more.